some tips that should help you, may help you, that have helped me in not only casting further, but casting with more excellent, casting with more power and line speed with less effort. That's what it's all about. So I want to give you some things that have helped me to do that. And one of the things that I like to do, and it may go against the grain a little bit, but I think it's real, is when I'm doing my sweep, say on a single spey or a snake roll, or really any cast, but mostly for the airborne cast, but you might try this if you're a waterborne caster. I want that rod to bend in my hands. One drill I have never understood, and I know a lot better casters than me and instructors than me have used it, is this drill where you push with your bottom hand and you leave your top hand open. I don't understand that because I want the rod to bend in my hands, so I close my fingers to bend the rod. So that's just me though. You know, season to taste. See what works for you. But I want to bend the rod in my hand, and to do that, I hold this one still and I push, but the bent rod is going to force me to close my fingers. So you don't need to have a death grip on it, but when I push out with my bottom hand, I want the rod to bend in my hand. And if you push out and you keep this one steady, give the bottom hand something to push against, it'll bend the rod. And I want the rod to bend on the sweep. I don't want to use my top hand and drag it across. I want to use both hands, bend the rod, fling an energetic D-loop out there, or at least a D-loop that stays kind of inflated, so to speak. So that's number one. I want to bend the rod in my hands on the sweep using my bottom hand for power. And really, you don't have to do it a lot. You can just go see, all that push right there generates the power. I don't want to generate the power by going like that, by going back with my top hand. So I'm going to close my fist, push. I'm going to rotate like a, okay, so that's one. Number two, and I got this mostly off Al Burr's podcast, Swing, Wet Fly Swing, Fin and Fire. And some from Tim Rajeff off his Wet Fly Swing podcast. Really good nuggets. With the forward cast, Al Burr talks about pulling the rod straight with the bottom hand on the forward cast, as opposed to slamming it with the top hand with the positive, or I guess if you slam it hard enough and pull back hard enough, it turns into a negative stop. Maybe, I don't know. I've never understood positive stop, but I do understand that if you slam it and you get the rod going like that, that energy is going to go somewhere, and it's not, according to Al Burr, it's not going to go out in the line going out. It's going to escape or somewhere. It's not going to be fully utilized energy if you slam the rod straight in a hard stop. But if you pull the rod straight with your bottom hand, that will smooth everything out and make the energy go into the line where it belongs to get your power. So, now I'm not saying this from the attitude of, you know, I have no knowledge of engineering or any of that stuff, but I do know the harder I slam it and the smoother I make my forward cast, the further and better it goes and the tighter the loop goes. And then the other thing that has really helped me a lot casting is overhang. And I'm not talking about overhang for the sake of making my loops tight. I can throw tight loops without messing around with overhang. But as an example, I have a 67-foot shooting head on this rod. And so, you know, sometimes I get good casts, sometimes I get bad ones. You know, if I'm in my groove, they go off pretty good. So for grins, I tried like 5 feet of overhang, or 4. And what I found out was this rod line combination, if I have, say, 4.5 feet of overhang on it, the loop is more consistent, it goes further, and it's just a perfect fit for this rod line combination. And it's all, a lot of all these rod combos and different casting styles, a lot of them really depend on what kind of rod you use. If you have a really super ultra fast rod and you have a line with a long back taper, you probably aren't going to want to cast it with 5 feet of overhang. This rod is very soulish. It's got a tip as big around as my little finger almost. Not really, but it is stout. And this rod has a super even bending flex pattern thingy. Not real fast, it recovers fast, but the whole thing bends evenly. Bends down into the butt, it's not hard to bend, so I can get away with more overhang. Plus, the line, it's girthy, it's big around, it has 0 rear taper, and so it just is blunt. It has a blunt butt end of the line. And with that, I can get away with a lot of overhang. And it's just kind of, when you start your sweep, you got to go real smooth in the lift and sweep and keep that tension in there without the help of a heavy line. You just got a bunch of overhang, so you got to keep everything tight and then smooth when you sweep back and start accelerating the rod tip. So you got to kind of take your time and go smooth and feel your way through it. I'm not trying to win a contest, see if I can cast with more overhang than anybody, but I will say that this is like the magic spot for this rod, for me, and for this no rear taper line. The other thing is, since this is 67 feet, I put a 14-inch cheater on it, now making it over 68 feet, just a tad over 68. So I thought, well, maybe if I have an extra 14 inches and 30 grains or 40, whatever the grains is, that it will not require as much overhang. But lo and behold, it seems to go a little further and cast a little better with the 4.5 feet of overhang, even with the extra 14 inches of cheater on there. So, but the idea is 4 to 6 feet of overhang made a huge difference in loop stability, distance, and turnover on this system, this long rod. I use it to balance the rod and to get better distance, more efficiency with less effort. I mean, there's a little more mental effort, a little bit. It's not magic or difficult, it's not that hard, but it does help. So try experimenting maybe with a little more overhang on your rod, whatever rod line system you're using, and then feel the rod bend in your hands during the sweep. Pull the rod straight in the forward cast with nice, even, accelerated tension, and you will cast with more efficiency, less effort, less force, and more finesse. And you're making, if you do all these things, you're going to make the line and the rod do the work, and you're not going to be muscling it with your body. You really want to stay away from muscling the rod. Get that nice anchor, smooth, even application of power for everything, for the sweep, for the forward cast. Everything's got to be smooth, all that stuff. It still applies, but really bend that rod. Try different overhang. You know, when I'm fishing, I usually use a foot or two, or wherever it comes. I don't really care that much. I don't even think about it. But with a longer line and different lines, I do better with a little overhang, and some don't need as much. So, you know, just season the taste, see what works for you, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, I think, if you try these things, if you practice. If you don't practice, I don't know if they'll just work like instant. But if you practice, nice application of power. Practice, you'll get better. One last thing, there's one more tip that's really helped with my forward cast. It's kind of taken all the guesswork out of it, but I got it from Travis Johnson's membership Instagram page. Low fee, well worth it. Really helped me out in solidifying my technique, casting further. So if you want to get the inside scoop, join us on Instagram on All Waters Angling, paid Instagram membership.